Hi there, Fleetwood owners. Today in your 2010 Fleetwood Discovery Motorhome, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Furrion's adapter cable to get a new rooftop-mounted Furrion AC system installed while utilizing our existing Coleman control modules and thermostat. So if you're probably wondering, well, how do I determine if I need to replace my entire unit with the thermostat, the control module, the whole shebang, or if my unit goes out, can I just replace the rooftop unit and use this adapter to plug it in? And one of the easiest ways to determine if it's going to work or not is based on the previous unit you've had up there. So this cable is designed to work with Coleman units. So if you've got a Coleman, such as maybe the Mach series, you'll know that it is going to be compatible and you'll be able to plug that right in. That's one of the easiest ways to know. But you may get on your roof and you may see, I don't see a name or anything written on my unit. I don't really know if it's a Coleman. It kind of maybe looks like it could be, but I just can't find something that is definitive that's telling me it's a Coleman. So we can pull down our unit and take a look at our wiring there, and we can get an idea of what we got going on. I really like this setup if you have an older system, like a Coleman style one, especially if it's an analog style setup that you've got in here. With an analog style setup, you're only going to have a single signal wire that goes here, versus a digital setup, you're going to have two wires, and those are your communication wires. So there's the difference there. You'll also notice that on an analog setup, you're going to have a lot of other wires that are in here that don't go to your thermostat. Those are the ones you just have the two communication or the single for your analog with two for digital. But with your analog setups, you're going to have other wires in here that are going to go to thermistors that are inside of your motorhome. So you're going to see, typically they're going to be labeled like compressor and various ones for those things. Another thing that you can also determine if this is going to be a great option to keep these things that you have here and just replace the rooftop unit, or if you want to replace everything, is to check where your heater circuits are running your motorhome. If your heater circuits have wires that run up here to where your existing units are, then replacing everything might be a good option because you've already got the wiring there to be able to hook everything up and switch over to digital. If you look up in here and your heater circuits aren't run here and they're only run to your thermostat, and that's what you see a lot of times on these older analog style systems, then you would have to run those wires from your thermostat to your units to be able to use the new digital Furrion ones. So with this adapter cable, we can eliminate a lot of that extra work by running these wires by just plugging in a rooftop unit to those existing control modules and wiring we have here in the vehicle. There is a unique special plug that will plug into your control module, and you can also use the design of that plug to help determine if your cables will plug into it or not. And here we can see that we're using the original thermostat that's equipped on our motorhome here to operate our new rooftop units. So I'm just going to click it over to cool. We've got it set to auto. We're going to choose our temperature to 60. There is typically a delay for the unit to kick on, so we're going to give it a second here for it to kick on. And there our unit kicked on. So if at home you've already purchased some Furrion rooftop units and you went to install them and found, oh man, these wires just aren't lining up, things aren't making sense, and you see a module like that, you can purchase just this cable to make that installation quick and easy. If you've already identified you've got some Colemans up there, then I would recommend purchasing the kit here at eTrailer that has the adapter cable as well as the rooftop unit. That way you'll get everything you need all in that one kit. So now that we've covered the scenarios on which components you're going to want in which scenarios, why don't you follow along with us and we'll show you how easy it is to get your rooftop unit replaced using this cable, because it is going to be way easier than a full install would be. We'll begin our installation by removing our old components. So we're going to get our distribution box down here, and that'll give us access inside so we can get that rooftop unit out of the way. Our old distribution box here is going to have some screws that hold it in. Looks like at the four corners. That's pretty common. So we're just going to use our Phillips bit here to remove these. So we're just going to zip these out. And as you start to remove those, you probably want to keep some pressure in the middle, because it will kind of just want to fall down after you take out a couple of screws there. The wood in your roof is not, it's not the most sturdy, so a single screw often is not going to be enough to hold up this weight. So now that we've got all those removed, we'll just pull this down and set it aside. After removing that, our customer's got a plate here. This plate's normally not in this location. This is actually where the air comes out from your rooftop air conditioning system. So he's blocked off the output here. Now, it doesn't mean he's completely blocked it off, because the roof has a channel inside of it that allows that cold air to go down the channel and come out your roof vents. So he's just blocked off the distribution box's output. So we need to get this out of the way though, so we can get the unit out of there. So we're going to zip out all these screws and get this out of here. This also is not going to go back up because it's not going to be compatible with our Furrion distribution box. And we'll just pull it down and set it aside. Here we can now have access to the bolts that hold our unit up. You could already see these two, but the ones over here were covered up by that plate, so that's why we had to get that out of the way. We'll just pull some of that foam back out of the way to reveal the head of each of those bolts. And then we're going to remove those using an 8mm socket. And now that we've got all of our bolts removed here, at this point we're ready to head up on the roof to start removing it. Normally on a lot of the other air conditioning systems, you can access your wiring down here and get that disconnected, but on this particular unit, it's way up in there. My hand's not gonna reach up in there. I'm not gonna really be able to see what I'm doing. So it'll be easier for us to just lift this unit up on the top, tip it over on the side, and access the wiring there. So with that being said, we're gonna be heading up on the roof next, but one of the things we are gonna make sure we do is we're gonna turn off make sure we don't have any power to our trailer, because this is gonna be this wire right here. That's our 120 volt wiring, and we want to be safe. So we're going to unplug from shore power. We're going to turn off our disconnects to make sure we don't have any live inverters or anything, and then we'll head up to the roof after that. So here we are up on top of the roof of the motorhome. Here's our old unit here. We've got it all loose underneath. We got an assistant up here as well, because these things are pretty bulky and heavy. It is possible to do it by yourself, but it's a whole lot safer to have an assistant help you out. So since we got it loose, first thing you want to do is kind of lift it up. We're going to rock it to the side. And we're going to do it kind of slowly to check to make sure that it's not going to grab the roof. And it looks like it's not sticking, but you do want to check for that, because sometimes the membrane can stick to it, and we don't want to tear the membrane. So here we can see we've got wiring on it that we'll need to still take loose here. This is our control module inside of here that all these wires are coming out of. So we're going to disconnect our wires from there. There's a connector in here that we'll disconnect. So I just pulled it out of there because there is some excess length to the wire here. We'll just pull both the tabs back and then pull those connectors apart to separate them. We're also going to be removing this whole module out from inside of here. So there's another connector right here that's connecting our rooftop unit to the module. So we're going to disconnect this one as well. It's got the same style of connector. It just plugs into the module. So now that we've got those disconnected, this is our 120 volt, and we made sure we unplugged our motorhome and all that good stuff, so that way there's nothing live here. So to get this out, it's easier to remove the module first. So we're just taking the wing nuts off that's located on each side of the module. Sometimes they can be a little stiff, so you might need a pair of pliers or something to assist you with getting them off of there. So now that we've got that other stud loose there, our module will just slide right out of there. We do have a couple wires that were just stuck in there, because none of those should be connected to anything anymore. So it was probably just stuck on like the sticky tape that they've got in there. So here's our module. The holes here are what slid over our studs. You got one on each side. And then you can see one of the studs kind of down here at the bottom, and then there is one here at the top as well. They're kind of, the module's so long, they're way off to the side, so you have to reach kind of in and around to the side to access those. But once you get those wing nuts off, that'll slide off of there, and then we can get this rooftop unit out of the way, and we can actually just drop this module down inside. I can reach it from down below, so I'm just going to leave it up here on top, and then I'll reach up and pull it down. If you can't reach it from down below, then you might want to drop it down to an assistant down there. So now we'll get this old unit off of here. We're going to take our new unit, we're going to get it set into place here on the roof. So we got that old unit down, we've got our new unit up here. Before we set it into place over the opening here, we just want to kind of clean off any dirt or debris. Sometimes there's sealants here that you may want to clean off as well. Usually though, it's just a foam gasket, so it's just dirt and debris you want to get out of the way there. Now we'll take our new one and we're just going to set it in place, lining up our foam gasket on the bottom of the unit. You can see that sticking out a little bit right here with our opening. So with our assistant, we're just going to lift it up. Be careful not to step into the hole there. And then we're going to drop the gasket right down on the corners. I kind of like to use my fingers to feel where those corners are to get that lined up. We're just going to check now, kind of looking all the way around to make sure our gasket's centered. And we'll just kind of slightly move it and adjust it as necessary until we are centered over the hole. So we're now back down again inside the motorhome here. This is the module that we passed down. This is the wiring hanging from inside the unit that we set on the roof. And this is the cable that we had disconnected from the module here, so that way we can get it kind of pulled up to get everything out of the way. So at this point now, one of the things I did first is I took some aluminum tape here and we kind of coated the whole inside here. It already had a lot of it already coated, but it was kind of had some tears and some things like that. And we want to get as good of a sealing as possible to ensure that we're directing the air where we want it to, you know, here in our cabin. We did leave the area open here so that way when the air comes out the outlet here, it'll force it through the roof ducts and come out the roof going back towards there. So now we've got that taped up. The next thing to do would be to get the module here mounted up. And this is going to fit right up in here. And we're going to be mounting it right to the surface, but we're going to be putting it on this side here because you can see we've got our duct here that needs to go towards the rear. There's no duct here going towards the front, so that's why we're going to mount it there. So here's the panel that we're going to be mounting it to right here. You can see it already previously had some components that had been drilled into it there. It does fit right up in here, and we're just going to be using some self-tapping screws to mount it. You can get those at your local hardware store. And we can see there that it does fit up in there. Now we do want to give ourselves a little bit of room. The bottom of our roof here, when our distribution box is mounted up, it's going to kind of squeeze up into the roof, so it's going to have some upward force. So we want to make sure we got clearance room there between our module and that distribution box. And when we put the mounting ring, it's a metal ring that your distribution box mounts to, that's going to have screws that's going to go up through it to hold the distribution box to that mounting ring. And we want to make sure we've got clearance as well for the threads, the end of that bolt to pass on through without hitting our module. So this is a pretty good amount of space there. You could probably use like the width of your thumb or something like that to give you a decent enough space. So we're going to just hold it up there now. And what I kind of like to do when I'm mounting these up here is marking the area first. So I'm just going to take my little self-tapper. I want to put it up here and I'm just going to kind of scratch the tape that we put on here. And now I know where that needs to go. That way I ain't got to hold this while I'm trying to do all this. So we've got it marked here. We're going to grab an 8mm socket for our self-tapping screw we're going to be using. Line it up with the location we marked and run it into place. And that's it. We just need to run it in there. We'll then back it out. That way we've started a location for the mounting of our module. We'll put our module back up into position there. Make sure we don't pinch any of our wires when we're doing this. So just line that hole up. And the reason I like to do this is you can usually just take the screw and just kind of poke that self-tapping end in there. It'll hold it there for you. And then we can run this down. And that'll hold our module in place, making it easier for us to get our other self-tapping screw screwed in. And we've got that mounted up there now. We can see here that our wiring actually can stay attached to our module. We're just gonna poke that up right up into here, get that out of the way. And now we can start plugging things together here. So we're gonna take the connector here from our new unit that we sat down on the roof. We'll then grab the adapter cable that comes with our kit here. And you can see that this end here with the 6 cables is going to line up with the 6 cable plug from our new unit that we put on the roof. We'll plug that in there, and then this will plug in to the location here on our module. And we can tuck that wiring up there as well. So next we can plug in the remaining connector that we've got over here. That connects to all these connections here on your module. Move our freeze sensor out of the way because that's an additional connection we'll have to make. And I'm going to route these around these wires here just to help keep things a little bit cleaner here on the inside. And we'll plug it into our connector over here that we had disconnected it from. Just got to line up the plugs. You can only plug it in one way because if you look, some are square, some are round. Or they're not really square, they're more of like a kind of like an igloo shape. And then these we can store up in here. And now we'll put our freeze sensor in place. And our freeze sensor here, this is this single white cable right here. The end of it here is a little probe. And this probe needs to detect the temperature of the evaporator coil above. It'll ensure that the coil doesn't freeze up. If it freezes up, you're going to have a restriction of airflow. You're going to lose your cooling properties that your system's providing. So we want to make sure that it doesn't happen because that can also cause moisture and stuff to start to drip once it starts to melt after you go to thaw it out. So this sensor here is just going to poke right in between the fins and the evaporator coil. We don't want to poke it in very far. It just needs to be able to touch it to get contact with it. And if we kind of look up, you'll notice that on the fins that are going vertical, you'll see there are tubes that go horizontally. We want to try to position this between those tubes because we don't want to damage and cause a leak in our system. So here's the fins I'm talking about. This is the opening here right by our module. There's the fins that go vertical, and you can kind of see the cross tubes that gets like the shiny tube that's running across there. So that's what we're talking about. I'm going to go ahead and poke this in there now. My hand's going to be in the way, so I'm going to poke it in there and you'll be able to see where we put it after we get it in there. And so here you can see it here. I just pushed it in between the fins. I didn't push it in very far. I bet you it's probably only going in those fins maybe between 1/8 and 1/4 inch. So it's just in there enough to hold the sensor in place to where it's not going to fall out of there. That's really all we need. Just get that contact to it. And now we're ready to start putting our distribution box up. So now that we've got our sensor on there, we actually have our module and everything all plugged in, our rooftop units in there. Really at this point we could fire it up and test it out. It's not going to work as efficiently as it will once we get everything fully installed because our fans right here, this is the outlet where it blows the air out into your cab or into your roof vents, and this is the inlet on this side here, so the fan will actually draw the air up across your evaporator coil to cool it down and then push it back out. We're going to have a lot of circulation right here now, so it's going to seem like it's not cooling very well, but you will definitely be able to feel that there is cold air there. And then once we get all our ductwork kind of finished here, it's going to be much more efficient because we'll have those two pieces separated, those two sides of our system. Now, just in the matter of safety, before we fire it up, we are just going to loosely install the bolts under the clamp here, just in case the unit kind of vibrates a little bit. It's not going to shift. The roof of your motorhomes can sometimes be quite domed, so the motor vibrating just a little bit might cause it to shimmy. So we're just going to set the plate up in here for now. We're not doing anything crazy with it, just kind of getting it sat up in here. And then we're just going to take our bolt, run it up through the opening, and thread it into the threaded hole in the bottom of our unit. We'll then just repeat this for the 3 remaining holes, and we don't even need to really get them that tight. I'm just going to tighten it down until it touches, and that's going to be good enough. And there we go. So I went ahead and plugged our motorhome back into shore power, and I turned back on our disconnect switches and everything, so we're powered up in here. I took the thermostat and set the setting to 60 degrees and put it on cool mode, and our unit has kicked on here. So we can see that we have fully operational system here as far as our wiring and everything is good. So we can move on to getting our distribution box and getting our unit fully torqued down onto our roof. So cool, all our tests passed. We're ready to go back now and finish tightening down these bolts. So I'm just going to run them down with the gun a little bit, kind of going back and forth, doing it evenly. And once they get you don't see any more movement really with it when you're pulling up, we're going to then switch to our torque wrench. Because this does have a torque spec, you'll find in your instructions. It is really low, so you'll want to make sure you got an inch-pound torque wrench to be able to do this. You can get torque wrenches here at E-Trailer. 3/8 inch drive is going to make a great torque wrench to complete this installation. And when doing this, we are going to be rotating back and forth between each one. All right, with our bolts torqued down, that's going to make sure that our unit's clamped on top of the roof, so it's not going anywhere. And that gasket that we kind of looked at earlier that's on the bottom of our compressor up there, that's going to squish it down and collapse it to the appropriate amount. That's going to ensure that it seals everything up, keeps out moisture, and it also helps to insulate and keeps the cooler air that we need in here. But the next thing we need to focus on now is separating the inlet, which is going to draw in air through here, and the outlet, and that's going to blow the air out through there. So we've got a gap here, and that gap's going to cause poor operation of our unit if we have a gap there. So to seal that up, we're going to take pieces that come with our distribution box here from Furrion. Now, another thing we didn't really talk about was the adapter brackets that come in our kit with our wiring. If you want to reuse your old distribution bracket that you took down, there are adapters that come with it, so you can do so. Our customer didn't want to reuse his old ones. He wanted something that looked nice and new to kind of match his new unit. But here's those adapters if you were curious about those. So instead of using the long bolts that came with the Furrion distribution box, if you wanted to use the old one, this would just go up in place. You'd use the bolts that come with your kit here. You'd thread up into the unit, and then this would give you a location here to thread your distribution box, your previous one, the one you took down, into one of these locations here. You'll get 4 of these, one for each corner, and you also get some varying length bolts to ensure that you're able to get those installed. So we got that tape pulled off of there now. Since we're using our new box, we need to put this piece up here, and this is our sealing plate. This comes with your distribution box from Furrion. That's why I kind of like also replacing the distribution box rather than using the old one. The old one might be set up perfect to where you can pull it down and put it back up without having to make any changes, but sometimes you need additional components in order to properly get it all sealed up. So that's where this is kind of nice, just having this all-in-one solution here from Furrion with this distribution box, giving us everything we need. And we're just going to poke that around, seal it up onto the tape, and we're making sure that we're pressing it up into that foam there on top. Now that we've got that up there, we have an additional layer to seal it up even further. So I'm going to take this and just kind of set it up in here because I want to get an idea of where I need to cut it to trim off the excess, and it's about right here. So I just fold it over and then just kind of run it down and bend it like that to give me a crease to follow, and then I'll just use my scissors here to trim that. Just a quick test fit to make sure we've got a good trim amount, and that looks pretty good. This way we can kind of squish it up a little bit, so that'll work out nicely. We'll pull our adhesive backing off now. And then we'll put this into place. I kind of like to fold it in half, kind of like that. That way we can get it pressed up nice and tight. Get ourselves kind of in the middle there. And that's going to do a really good job of ensuring that our inlet and outlet sides are sealed off from one another. And you can even take some aluminum tape and further seal it up if you think you need it as necessary. But this looks pretty good with this foam here. This is really going to squish down nice and give us a good sealing between the two sections there. So here's our distribution panel. Now you do want to keep in mind that if you're buying the adapter kit, where it's just the adapter kit, or the adapter kit with the rooftop unit, that the distribution panel doesn't come with it, because the adapter kit comes with those bracketry to allow you to use your old distribution box. But our customer wanted this new one here, so to get this one mounted up, we're going to pull our cover off right here, You can easily tell this one here, it says this way front on this side. That's the side that you want to pull from. That's got our little ears there. It'll pull off that way, and then you'll slide it off the other way to get that off of there. That'll reveal our filters here. So we're just going to go ahead and take these filters out. And that's where our screw holes are. So we're going to go ahead and take this side off as well. And now we can get this mounted up. Again, it's labeled this way towards the front. That makes getting this mounted up extremely easy. We'll now take the distribution box here. We're gonna line it up on the bottom of our system here. And then we're gonna take the smaller screws that come with our kit. I'm putting it on the end of my bit on my little screw gun here. We'll then bring it up. We're going to put it through one of those openings and thread it into that metal bracket that we had used to clamp our unit onto the roof. And we're just going to repeat this for the 4 remaining holes. We'll now take our filters and put those back into place. The little ears here will line up with little notches up in there. So we'll just line it up with those notches and then click it back up in there. Same thing with the other side. And then we'll just put our panel back up. And whether you're using a new Furrion one or your original one, once you've got that all mounted up, really at this point we're just back to testing it out once again, make sure we've got good airflow out of our vents. And if everything seems good there, our installation's complete. And that completes our look at Furrion's adapter cable to allow you to install a Furrion unit into an existing Coleman system.